Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Gratitude Through Hard Times. It's your host, Chris Schembra. The holidays are upon us. New York is absolutely beautiful, in full swing, and we're excited that you've joined us here today for another special episode of this amazing podcast. For all of our loyal listeners, we welcome you back with open arms. I don't know what keeps you coming back, but we're so grateful for your enduring and loyal support. Some of my favorite moments on a weekly basis are when you email in your thoughts, questions, comments, and concerns from today's episode guests. For all you new listeners, I give a big old welcome. God, I wish I could cook you pasta sauce around my dinner table and meet you in person. We're so excited to have you. I don't know who sent you this episode. I don't know how you stumbled upon today's podcast guest, but you're in for a conversation where we cover the topics of gratitude, empathy, human connection, ancient Stoic philosophy, on how to up-level your life and leadership in a really positive way. I'm going to invite you to click that subscribe button at the end of this podcast. And I hope you'll look through the podcast episode archives as you'll find over 250 episodes. Our commitment for the last 6 years, bringing on some of the world's best leaders to share the story of how they built the companies they've built today and the gratitude that they have for the people along the way. We're glad you're here. Grab that cup of coffee, grab that glass of water, glass of wine, and I think you're going to be really excited about today's episode guest. Today, we've got our dear friend Felipe Gómez. And folks, let me tell you, I get to meet a lot of people in my life, and there's a lot of people that say nice things about us because they think that's the nice thing to do. And then there's people that say nice things about us because they genuinely see me and understand my intentions and see through the loathing, self-doubt, and insecurity. And one of those people in my life for the last year and a half has been Felipe Gómez. And what an amazing friend and mentor he's been in my corner. Felipe is a true master of his craft, a lover of life, a virtuoso of today's time. And we get to talk to him for the next 45 minutes about life, about leadership, about showing up each and every day to live the good life. You can look in the show notes below for Felipe's detailed bio, but folks, he's amazing. Felipe, not only as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as a business builder, is also a dazzling, devout pianist and a keynote speaker. He's delivered over 1,000 performances across 33 countries on the world's biggest stages. Folks, if you check out his keynote speaker reel in the bio below, you will see an arena or a concert hall filled with thousands of people holding up their phones, singing in unison, learning about life and leadership in a dazzling performance. Insightful, relevant, filled with heart and passion. The largest companies on the planet call Felipe Gómez up to teach them about the simple philosophies of living a good life, leading like a virtuoso, building trust, being magnanimous, listening with deep empathy. He uses classical music and modern day leadership philosophies to have a moving impact on the world's biggest crowds. And we've got him here tonight. So without further ado, folks, please take your seats and give a round of applause ahead of time for my dear friend, Felipe Gómez. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Oh, Chris, what an introduction. I'm completely flattered. Thank you, my friend. I'm so happy to be here.
What does it feel like every time you hear someone talk about you in that way, by the way?
No, I don't know. I was just here smiling, happy to listen to your words and, flattered, honored, humbled. Thank you.
My pleasure, Felipe. Now, for all our loyal listeners, you know we like to ask a simple question at the start of every podcast. To our new listeners, this is a question we've been asking to everybody we've ever met since hosting our very first dinner party on July 15th, 2015. You can check out more of that story in the show notes below. But to kick us off here today, Felipe, we got to ask you the gratitude question. If you could give credit or thanks to one person in your life that you don't give enough credit or thanks to, or that you've never thought to thank, who would that be?
Mm. Well, the person that comes to my mind right now is my first piano teacher. Her name is Clara Lucia Sanchez from Colombia. And, well, I think when I was 4, I stepped into her apartment as a little boy wanting to learn the piano. And for many years, probably until I was 13, every week I was there. She was patient. She was kind. She was um, consistent. She was loving in teaching me the basics of music, how to love music, how to perform with passion. And I think she, in a certain way, well, shaped that dimension of my life that it's music. Well, of course, my parents had to do a lot uh, to do with that, but I know her love, her commitment, and her dedication, I think, was absolutely key in the process for me falling in love with music and turning music into a true backbone for my life. So uh, a lot of gratitude for her. Probably I've never thought about it.
Do you know where she is?
Yeah, she's in Bogota, still teaching kids how to play the piano. So she's still many years later doing the same things.
Ana Lucia?
Clara Lucia.
Clara Lucia.
Yeah.
Cheers to her.
Oh yes, cheers.
Felipe, you talked about going in as a 4-year-old, as a little boy, wanting to learn. Sometimes when people grow up and they get older, they lose that spark to want to learn. How have you kept your spark of learning alive all these years later? And what are you excited to learn next in your life?
Oh, that's a great question. I think we were designed for learning all of our lives. Many people frame education and learning for school, university, college, probably a master's degree. Some other more persistent people go and do a PhD. But I think every day provides us with so many opportunities to learn. And at the end, it's our decision to really take those opportunities or not. We can learn from a conversation with a friend. We can learn when we're commuting in the train just by watching people. We can learn by reading the newspaper or a magazine or a book, or just having fun with a friend. That night a few weeks ago that we spent in your apartment cooking shrimps with polenta was a great learning experience. So I think if we can make every little activity of our lives a learning activity, it's a great habit we could work in.
Side note, before we get back to what you just said, for all of you listening, heard Felipe say, we ate shrimp and polenta. And for those of you that know him from South Carolina, probably thinking to yourself, why didn't he cook shrimp and grits? Well, there's a whole long story about Sean Dubrovac and myself going to Whole Foods. We couldn't find the grits, but we found polenta, which is both cornmeal, and so we used it anyways. But
And it
that's a
was
story
so
for another
good.
day.
It was so good.
We improvised. As Felipe teaches, is one of the great qualities for leadership in life, improvisation. You and Josh Linkner talk about that a lot. But going back to what you just said, We are all designed for learning. Is that the first time you've said that?
First time.
Wow. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, let's explore.
I love that you said we all have a decision to learn or not learn. We all have a choice to learn or not learn. It's a choice that we have every day, not in big things, but in small little opportunities for learning. That's agency. That's taking life by the reins. How important is it for people to have that little feeling of control, of choice, of decision in a world that's so out of their control? How does that create peace, clarity, or contentment?
I think it's natural. I mean, if you decide to, and I'm going to complement it a little bit. Every day, every minute, every second of your life, you have the opportunity to learn, to explore, and to love. Let's explore those three words. And if you truly get into the habit of living your life, learning, loving, and experimenting, I think it's a life well lived, because many times seconds, minutes, hours, days go by and we haven't learned anything. We haven't explored anything new. We're doing the same things over and over again. And probably we're not sharing enough love. And we are designed to love, designed to learn, designed to experiment. And I think that should be something we become more intentional in doing those three things. So if you start doing it in a more natural way and it actually builds into a habit, that will give you peace. That'll give you peace and comfort and joy and happiness. Because when you love, when you explore, when you learn, you feel useful, you feel purposeful. I don't know what's the word, purposeful, whatever it is. You feel curious, and I think when you feel you're like that, you feel alive. If you don't do these three things, probably you don't feel that alive. You're like a dead body breathing, but there's no real purpose in your life. So I think loving, experimenting, and learning should be our three commitments, probably for this new year that's starting soon.
And when you talk about love, you quote unquote say in your big keynotes, when we're talking about love, the mean is the extreme.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, that's Aristotle. Most of my work is inspired in Aristotle. He, many thousands of years ago, he was probably one of the first thinkers that, after Plato, brought the virtues to life, and he speaks about the virtues and how each virtue, which is a habit of good action, has an opposite vice. So, for example, the virtue of discipline would have the vice of how do you say, of laziness, right? If you're not disciplined, you're lazy. But the interesting thing is that each virtue actually has two vices. So it has a vice of defect where the virtue is not present, but it also has a vice of excess when you are doing too much of that virtue, which is also bad. It's also a vice, a habit of bad action. Also, for example, in discipline, using the same example, if discipline is the virtue, the vice of defect is laziness, right? But the vice of excess is rigidity, because you are so disciplined that you become rigid, and that is also bad. So Aristotle calls the golden mean that center, where you are disciplined, right? Where you find your center, where you find your mean, right? And every single virtue has these two vices, except love, because of course, love has a vice of defect, which is apathy. Nothing moves you, nothing, you don't feel anything about anything or anybody. But there's no excess for love, because the more you love, the better, right? So what Aristotle says is exactly what I replicate in my keynotes. Is when you speak about love, the mean is the extreme. So the more you love, the better. And he defines love as willing the good of the other. So if we define love, because love could be, could have many definitions, and many people could argue that if you love too much, that's also bad, but not if you're loving in the true essence of that meaning of love, willing the good of the other, right? That has no limit. The more you do it, the better.
Willing the
good
of the other.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Let's look at the word other.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a mindset that you need to have in order to acknowledge the other. Is it an inward mindset or an outward mindset? And what are the differences between the two?
I think it's an outward mindset that then bounces back to an inner mindset, So it's a flow, it's not only an outward mindset. It starts with an outward mindset. So if you're with anybody, with your friend, with a family member, with your spouse, with your kids, with your whoever that is in front of you, if everything you say or do is aimed to will the good of that person in front of you, right? It's love. But the beautiful thing is that when you do that consistently, that will bounce back to you, right? Will bounce back sooner or later. We don't know exactly when, but it's going to bounce back. And I'm sure that everybody listening to this podcast is aware that the moments of most profound joy and happiness and fulfillment that we've experienced in our lives is when we are giving to others something. If when we cook a great meal, or when we invite people to our home for dinner, or when we go to the streets to bring coffee and pizza to the homeless, or when we go to the hospital and visit the sick people, when we are servicing other people, that is what truly brings us joy and happiness and fulfillment for ourselves. So if you're continuously willing the good of the other, right? It's a factory of joy. It's an industrial factory of joy. The more you love, the more you help, the more you serve, the more you take care of your friends, of your family, of your loved ones, the more you will get back in joy, in happiness, in sensing that beautiful feeling of, oh, what a great day. It was so good today. Even if you help someone with their bags going out of the grocery store, or someone that is struggling to cross the street, or I don't know, anything. When you do those little acts of kindness that ultimately are acts of love, it's when you truly feel happy, when you truly feel useful, when you truly feel joyful. Make sense?
Yes. And that was the topic of our most recent Rolling Stone article, which actually became an editor's choice. See, the Dalai Lama once said, if you would like to be selfish, you should do it in a very intelligent way. The stupid way to be selfish is seeking happiness for ourselves alone. The intelligent way to be selfish is to work for the welfare of others. The paradox is that the more we give, the more we receive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the concept of intelligent selfishness, the happiness we seek, is most easily found when we contribute to the happiness of those around us.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy?
It's incredible. And I think this is something that should be taken much more seriously everywhere, of course, but especially in corporations, because I think probably we lost, or at least it's very well hidden, this secret inside corporations. Because the mindset in corporations, it's, oh my God, how do I shine? How do I, get promoted? How do I get a salary increase? How do I get that bonus? And the system, tends to bring you into this spiral where you become the center, and then you start shifting out of that golden mean, you know, to states of greed, to states of ambition, like unhealthy ambition. There's nothing
Mhm.
wrong with ambition, but there's a lot of unhealthy ambition, um, of pride, So if we open the doors for this kind of mindsets and behaviors in teams, in organizations, in companies, I think that would be a true revolution.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, studies back this up. Adam Grant is an author who one of his books is called Give and Take. In his book, Give and Take, Why Helping Others Drives Our Success,
Hmm.
he spends 258 pages showing that it's the givers that become the most successful within and on the outside of organizations, not the people who take, not the people who give in order to take,
Hmm.
but the people who give.
And you know what's the irony? That what you give, it's actually small, very small, and easy to give things. We're not talking about complex things. It's about giving you a minute so that you can talk to me and I can listen to you.
Time,
Time,
a
attention.
question, a
Exactly.
listening ear.
That's it. And that's so scarce everywhere. Especially in corporations, because the agendas and the politics and all of that stuff, and that's something we need to change.
Before we get into conflict resolution and before we get into listening, I want to ask you this question. What's stopping us? Is this thing, this giving mentality, this idea of learning, exploring, and loving, is it a privilege? Is it something unattainable to the masses? Do you have to be born with it? What's standing in our way of doing this?
It's super simple, Chris. It's a choice. The three things are choices that we have in our lives every minute. We can choose to learn, to love, and to explore, or not to, And probably most of the time we tend not to. And that's how time goes and passes, and we don't learn anything new, and we didn't love enough, and we didn't experiment enough, we didn't try new things, we didn't, but it's a choice. What's stopping us? It's ourselves that is stopping us. So we have to make a choice to truly, in an intentional way, learn, experiment, and love. Probably if you journal, I don't journal, but if you journal, I know many people journal out there. Those should be three things that at the end of the day, you say, okay, what did I learn today? How did I love today? Right? And did I did anything new? Did I experiment something new? And probably just the habit of journaling on these three things is going to make you more aware of them, and hopefully it'll become a habit, and we are it's I think we can get to a point, to a state where we are natural automatic learners, lovers, and experimenters. And I think that's what the world should be filled with.
You don't need to be born with it. It
Yep.
doesn't require high IQ. It just requires the willingness to make a choice,
Mm-hmm.
a decision. I had a wonderful lady by the name of Dr. Edith Eva Egger on my
Mm.
podcast a few weeks ago, Holocaust survivor.
I know her.
And she
She's
told
very old. Yeah.
she's
She's in
very
California, right?
she's Florida, I believe. She lives in
Okay.
I don't know. Wonderful. Came on the podcast with her grandson. Do you know her story about arriving to Auschwitz-Birkenau off the cattle cars?
Nope.
So, for all our listeners, imagine this. You're 16 years old, and you've got a sister named Magda. Beautiful, gorgeous sister, very talented at the piano. You've got a mother in her mid to late 40s. And the three of you have been separated by your father already in the middle of the war because you're Jewish. You've been placed on a cattle car where you've stood up for the last 4 days with no food, no water, no place to sit down, poop, or pee. You sleep on the shoulders of your neighbors. And you arrive to this place, Auschwitz-Birkenau, where the sign above you is a message of hope. Work will set you free. And you go to check in at Auschwitz-Birkenau, and there's a fellow, come to be known as Dr. Joseph Mengele, the angel of death, who looks at you and your sister Magda and your mother and asks her, is that the mother or your sister? And you know that people above the ages of 40 and under the ages of 12 go to the line to the left. And you know everybody else goes to the line to the right. And instead of tricking Dr. Joseph Mengele and saying, she's my sister, you tell the truth. You say, that's my mother. And the minute you say that, the two sisters go one way and the mother goes the other way. And it's a few minutes later that you look back and realize your mother is walking into a crematorium. You'll never see your mother again. But you and your sister Magda go and get all your hair shaved off. And Magda's sitting there with clumps of hair in her hand. And she looks at you and she says, Edie, how do I look? Now, you don't want to lie to her, but she looks like a mangy dog. These are Edith's words, not mine. She looks like a mangy dog, but you don't want to lie to her. But you look and you say, Magda, your eyes, they're so beautiful. I could never truly see them and appreciate them when you had all that hair. And Edith realized in that moment that she had a choice. She could either focus on what she just lost, or she could focus on what she still had. And that, folks, that single choice, she would have to make that choice 1,000 times a day for years of her life, both in the Holocaust, through liberation, post-Holocaust, and beyond. And
Beautiful.
she made that choice each and every day. And folks, I don't want to hear you say, my life's too hard. I got nothing going for me. There's so many obstacles in the way for me to make my own choice at every moment of the day to learn, explore, and show love. I don't want to hear it.
Me neither. Let's do it.
But what do you think causes that entitlement within people to say, oh, no, I could never do these things, which seem so simple on paper. Felipe's teaching me these things from the state, but I can't do it. No way. What in society causes that way of thinking?
I think there are many things. I think our education system kind of kills creativity, so a 4-year-old is much more creative than a 17-year-old when they graduate from high school. And I think it's just the way education was designed that, they just put students in little boxes, and math and engineers and, or artists and musicians, and they just frame you and they guide you through a route of predefined subjects and themes. And then you get to the corporate world, and corporate cultures also tend to, mold you, right? And at the end, you are just, a product of a system that kind of stops us from making those choices to love, to learn, and to experiment, But at the end, and this might sound very simplistic, but it's very true. It's a choice. Even if we were part of that factory of human beings called education and corporate cultures and whatever, still one morning we can wake up and we can decide to help someone, to take the phone and call someone we haven't called for years, probably, have a nice conversation, thank them for anything that they did for you in your life, try something new, no? And this could be super simple. I'm going to cook something different for dinner. You always tend to do the same recipes, and or taking the same route to your office. Just take another route. Do something different. It's a choice. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to ask permission. You don't have to anything. You just have to consciously say, I'm going to do something different today. And if you do it intentionally and go through that excitement of doing something new, of that incredible sentiment and feeling of loving someone or showing your love to someone that probably you haven't showed it for a long time, it's going to feel so good, I think. And the more you have that feeling, the more confident you're going to be to move on and doing more stuff like this until it becomes a habit, and a way of life. I think we should all aim for that way of life, a way of life where you are loving, experimenting, learning, and doing what you do. I mean, and you can do that without changing jobs. You can do that without moving cities. You can do that without traveling far. We have all these paradigms and thoughts that I'm going to be happy when I can go to Bali, or when I can travel to Paris, or I would be so happy if I could have that other job, or I would be so happy if I have a bigger apartment. I think happiness is more about those other little things that are choices that you can make without spending a penny. It's just saying, yes, let's do it, and you will get that feeling, that fulfillment. And I think it's going to feel so good that you're going to love it so much that the more you do it, the better,
Yes to everything you just said. First of all, as our friend Laura Gassner-Auding says, the worst 4 words in the English language are "I'll be happy when." Mm-hmm. We've all heard that before. I'll be happy when and if that next big thing happens. The only problem is you're never going to get that thing, or once you get that thing, you realize it didn't mean anything to you. What you also said is that the more you do these things, the more you make that choice, the more you build this habit, the more that you achieve positive emotions through learning, exploring, and loving, the more it helps you do more of that in the future. There's actually science to that, folks. And so many of you are familiar with the researcher that we always quote, Barbara Fredrickson, her broaden and build theory of positive emotions. Positive emotions like learning, exploring, loving, gratitude do more than just make us feel good temporarily. They broaden what's called our thought action repertoires. It rewires the brain to allow us to see more possibilities, think more creative, which brings with it both indirect and direct long-term adaptive benefits. Enduring personal resources like resilience, hope, pride, optimism, self-confidence, self-efficacy, creativity, innovation, social connection. This leads to job promotion, growth, getting ahead in an industry, doing nice things for a community. And then the cycle keeps repeating itself. This broaden and build theory of positive emotion is what's called a contagious upward spiral.
Even your health, I think even your health is altered when you decide to do these little things. I have a very good friend. He's a very renowned neurologist in Colombia. And many years ago, I had a conversation with him, and he told me, it's funny because many times I see people that are very, 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 very sick, with a super aggressive cancer or with something, very serious from a health perspective. But they act as if they were completely healthy. And it's just their mindset because they're willing to learn, to experiment, to love. And he told me, but at the same time, I see people that are completely healthy, that you look at them and they look like if they are dying with the worst cancer ever, and they are absolutely healthy. And what's making them so bitter and so sad and so like that, it's exactly that. It's not having gratitude, feeling entitled. It's not doing the same thing over and over again, but having an experimentation mindset, doing new things every day, loving, giving, and it completely shifts and changes your own health, your own well-being.
I completely agree. In our book, Gratitude Through Hard Times, Finding Positive Benefits Through Our Darkest Hour, which hit number 1 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, there's an entire chapter called Gratitude Fuels Hope and Healing.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, we share the story of my girlfriend Molly's Irish twin, Hope, one of the coolest people in the world. Now, Hope was born with spina bifida and Chiari malformation and has had over 100 surgeries in her young 28-year-old life. Every doctor that's ever had Hope as a patient will say she healed the fastest of any patient we've ever had. You name the surgery, she was the fastest healer. Why? Because Hope is quite literally the most grateful person I have ever met. She texts her entire phone book, everybody that's in her contact list on a daily basis, telling them how much they mean to her.
Oh, wow.
Hope fuels healing. Right? And so UC Davis Medical Center actually shows gratitude is related to a 10% improvement in sleep quality in patients with chronic pain, 76% of whom have insomnia, like me. A daily gratitude practice can decelerate the effects of neurodegeneration. Practicing gratitude led to a 7% reduction in biomarkers of inflammation in patients with congestive heart failure, or, by the way, in patients with post-concussive syndrome like me. Grateful people have 16% lower diastolic blood pressure. It's just gratitude practice before a stressful activity lowers cardiovascular stress by 54%.
Wow. That's incredible.
It's just good for you, and it helps you get ahead. Okay, so getting back to the tangibles.
Yeah.
These leaders, you leaders listening to this call, what's the first step? What's one thing, right? Talking about, as my dad talks about with his motivational publishing company, the Hilton Head Island Performance Group, all we can control is our attitude, our image, and our motivation. And he's taught those 3 pillars to U.S. presidents, entire sports leagues, hundreds of companies, etc. Attitude, image, motivation to achieve excellence and gain the competitive edge. Now you teach similar things: attitude, passion, being magnanimous, listening. What's the first thing? What's one thing that a leader listening to this can wake up and do tomorrow, that you teach, can do tomorrow?
I think that there's one thing that we're all very bad at, and if we consciously make a decision to do it better, it's going to fulfill the 3 things we were discussing before. To experiment something new, love more, and learn. Okay, and that is listening better. So basically, my realization about the importance of listening was because, well, I speak about virtue. And somehow I think that speaking about virtue is, of course, super relevant and super important, but it's a little bit, like high level. It's difficult to really materialize into little operational things that actually make you virtuous. And it's funny because what Aristotle says, and then Thomas Aquinas, which is the other great thought leader in virtues, is that in order to become virtuoso, you have to act virtuously. If you want to be a just person, you have to do acts of justice. If you want to be a kind person, you have to do acts of kindness. So it's just doing the little things. So what I did is that I developed this map of little things you have to do to grow in some virtues. So, for example, There's this author that says that in order to grow in discipline, one little thing you can do every day is wake up early and make your bed. Little things that you have to consistently make over time that will make you more disciplined. If you want to be more empathetic, probably having the habit of looking into the person you're speaking to, into their eyes, being attentive, and that little habit makes you a more empathetic person. So these little, very doable things, very simple things that have a great impact, but little things. So I made a list for all of the virtues that I speak about, right? And listening was the only one that was present on every single virtue. So if you want, to be magnanimous, to have this greatness of the mind, you have to develop the ability to listen to your heart, to listen to yourself. What do you really, what do you want? What are you longing for? Many times we don't hear our own desires. If you want to be disciplined, of course, listening is super important, because if you want to, follow instructions and be disciplined in what you do and execute flawlessly, listening is absolutely important. If you want to be humble, if you want to be empathetic, if you want to be a person of service, if you want to be loving, listening is present all across the board. So I became very curious about the whole idea of listening. So I started reading a lot about how to listen better, and this whole new wave of intentional listening and all of this stuff. And the more I read and the more I understood, the more frustrated and sad I became, because I realized that I was a very bad listener. I was doing all the things that were bad, interrupting, having my phone by me, looking at the phone and jumping into conclusions, and not respecting moments of silence. So many things that are bad habits of listening. I've been doing them for most of my life, And then I started researching a little bit more, and I found that I was not alone. And this is a truly global crisis. And there are numbers, So 50% of errors in the workplace can be stemmed back to listening failures. 75% of people get distracted in conversations. US corporations, it's estimated that about $1 trillion is lost by mistakes originated by listening failure. So there's a lot of data that supports the idea that we have to become better listeners, but there's no formal education on how to listen well. We are taught how to read. We spend a lot of money on how to speak better and how to express ourselves better, but there's no school for listening. And I think listening is something that drives so many beautiful things. If you truly learn how to listen, you are being kind, you're being loving, you're being curious, you're being all of the above. So listening opens the doors for all of these elements that we've been discussing. And I think that if we make the conscious decision to I want to become a better listener, it's something that it's worth it, every penny.
Felipe, you are famous for putting people through a 42-day listening email thread about classical music. And everybody that's listening, the link to Felipe's 42-day program, free program, a Spotify playlist, a classical song is delivered to your inbox every single day with words around it for 42 days. And you've yet, nor have I, and maybe this is what we're going to do together, we've yet to put out a program on something we call the tension of silence. Now, a friend of mine, Spencer Baird, told me on Wednesday, May 22nd of this year, that there's no value in the tangibles. There's only value in the intangibles. There's no value in what's being said. There's only value in what's not being said. So talk to me, and I want you to, you can make this as beautiful, as delicious. Tell me about the beauty of silence.
Enough said.
Thank you. You know, one of my favorite episodes of the Kill Tony podcast is episode number 578. It'll be in the show notes below. Episode number 578, about halfway through the podcast, and it's a live podcast on a stage where they bring up, audience members or people who put their name into a bucket to give a 60-second comedy spot in front of a panel of judges. And they pull forth this one guy. And he's a unique looking fella. Unique looking. Great guy. He comes up. He doesn't say a word for his 60-second comedy set. But you know what? He gets a standing ovation. And then Tony Hinchcliffe and Dave Attell and the third panel of judge, they pretty much interview him for like 8 minutes without him saying a word.
Wow, I have to see that. I'm curious.
And then he gets a big joke book. He ends up saying one word at the end of it. Tony finally asked him, "How do you feel?" And he said, "Good," in a really awkward voice. And then he just walked off. It was so fantastic.
Oh, that's
It was
awesome.
the most laughs per words in the show's 11-year history.
Wow, that's incredible. Good story.
And so what's the ratio or formula or algorithm we could invent around the tension of silence?
Okay, so I have something for you. I have a ratio. So the ratio is 400, 150. No, sorry. 900, 150, 400. Okay? So it goes like this. Our mind can think 950 words a minute or 900 words a minute. Okay? But we can only speak 150 words per minute. That's why many times that we step into a meeting and we have this mental plan. I have to go through all of these points. And at the end of the meeting, you realize, you only covered a fraction of what you wanted to say, because your thoughts are going much faster than your words, okay? And then the 400 is we can only listen, or we can listen effectively about 400 words per minute. So it creates a lot of tension, as you said, because first we cannot say everything we're thinking about at the same rate, but the listener can actually listen more than what we are telling them. They have more bandwidth in their brain, in their listening system. So that's why we get distracted. It's so difficult to be focused on a conversation because our mind just thinks, well, I'm listening to this, but I can do something else. And you start thinking about your next meeting, or you grab your phone, or I don't know, whatever fills the bandwidth of your mind, which distracts you. You're not present anymore. You're not giving your true 100% self to the person in front of you in the conversation, So if we realize that ratio, it's incredible, because the most powerful thing, and you already said it, is that the most important thing in a conversation is what it isn't said, So if we spoke for 1 minute, I wanted to say you 900 words, but I could only express 150, okay? And then there is this belief and theory that I've heard many, many times, that they told you that at the end of the conversation, a sign that you truly paid attention is for you to paraphrase what the other person said, summarize, and tell them, look, if I listened correctly, what you wanted to tell me was this and this and this. Yes, great, super, okay, see you next time. That's totally wrong, because we're focusing on the same 150 words, and there are 750 unsaid words, So a little thing that I tell the people that listen to me in my keynote, The Beauty of Listening, that they should shift or change is, do not paraphrase. Instead of paraphrasing, ask one simple question. And that simple question is, tell me more. And when you tell the other person, tell me more, you're opening the door first for that person feeling important, listened, what are they going to think? Oh, this guy is really interested, in listening to me. They're going to feel cared for, and then you give the opportunity of that time that you were going to spend on repeating the same words that you already listened for them to open their heart and tell you more, and the more you ask them, tell me more and tell me more, the more you're going to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into what they truly want to tell you. The important stuff is, it's difficult to say, and it's not in the first 150 words. You really have to go deep into their minds and into their hearts to truly get the important stuff. So I think that habit of asking, tell me more. The other super powerful question is, how can I help? At the end, how can I help? That's opening another question, another door, the door of compassion. People are going to feel, oh, this guy, it's not only interested in what I have to tell, but they're willing to, do something about it, to help me somehow. So if you ask, tell me more, how can I help? Those are questions that are going to completely transform the way you communicate and the way you listen.
Folks, notice Felipe did not use the word why. Felipe, do you have a war against the word why like I have against the word why?
I'm not sure I have a war. I think it's an important word, but it's probably not the most important, right? I would say the most important word is love.
We'll get back to love in a sec, and we'll start closing out to honor everybody's time. But just to close the thing on the why, I'm at war with the word why. Why? Because why can sometimes come across as accusatory or judgmental or dead-ended or lacks control. And here's what I mean. Let's say someone is saying, the sky is, the sky is blue and the clouds are white, and I want to bring my team to ice cream at 3 p.m. Why? Huh? That could be pretty accusatory.
It's judgy, yeah.
It's judgy. We instead, and I won't go too deep into those concepts, but we instead invite people to think about, if you're going to be known for your questions, if you're going to end the tension of silence with a good follow-up question, maybe have it be a what or a how question. Let's take the same ice cream example. Hey, boss, I'd like to bring my team to ice cream at 3:30 p.m. What location are you going to? Oh, I'm going to go to the Cold Stone Creamery down the street. What proximity is that Cold Stone Creamery to the local high school? Oh, it's right around the block. What time does the local high school get out of school? I think 3 p.m. What are young school students' favorite after-school activity? Ice cream. How many people do you expect to be contending with at that ice cream parlor at 3:30 p.m.? Ooh, good call out, boss. Can I bring them at 11:30? Sure. How much do you need for a budget? See how that's a different conversation? So, anyways, just closing the loop on the what and the how instead of why. I'm a big fan of.
Like that.
I'm going to ask you a question as we start to close out, and it's in the same vein as kind of what we've just been talking about with the said, the 900, the 150, the 400. What is unsaid on your heart right now in terms of this podcast?
You mentioned the word attention, and I think there's another word that must go always after tension, that is release. tension and release. And I think life is a sequence of tension and release moments, just like music. So if you listen any piece of music, the whole thing is built around tension and release, tension and release. Tension is a very important part in our lives, because it's what, feeling a little uncomfortable with stuff is healthy, right? What it's unhealthy, it's maintaining the tension and intensifying the tension. We have to learn to release. How do we release? Some people breathe, some people pray, some people meditate, some people walk, some people run, some people sit in the piano, grab the guitar, cooks a pasta, right? So you have to find your ways to letting that rhythm of tension and releasing your life, be more steady, right? Tension is part of life, I think, and in tension we can also frame probably little suffering, little pain, loss, feeling lost. But there's always a release, and we have to learn to not to stay too long in the tension. And again, it's a choice. It's something we find that it's going to help us to find that release until the next tension comes, right? So if you Google music tension and release, you're going to see a lot of videos of how every song in history is built around the concept of tension and release. Probably every great work of literature is also built around tension and release. And I think that's just mimicking life. Life is a game of tension and release since we are born until the day we die. So we have to learn to live with that flow of tension and release, and learning how to manage those moments of tension so that we can easily turn them into again, a moment of peace, of serenity, of gratitude, of loving, of having fun, and being absolutely sure that no matter how tense that tension is, there will always be a release, and there will always be hope and happiness and better days.
It sounds like Aristotle's golden mean.
Exactly. It all ties back to Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas. That's pure wisdom. I found so much wisdom in them. So
No, it also sounds like, flow neuroscience, which is, doing a task that falls within the challenge skill sweet spot, doing things that are too hard and too easy. Tension, release, hard, easy. Flow is found in between. The golden mean is found in between. It's the balance between virtue and excess, between excess and deficiency.
I wish we could stay longer.
We're going to bring great things to the world together, my friend.
Well, let's ask the people. We have this crazy idea. Should we tell them, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. So Chris, through food and pasta, and me through music, are trying to spread a nice message around the world, mainly to corporations, but also to a lot of people. So we're thinking of putting together a night of music and food, and of course, content. So tell us what you think. Chris will cook.
Atlanta,
Chris will cook. I will bring my piano, and we'll have a good time thinking about gratitude, learning, experimenting, loving, having fun.
It's even from a broad, your vehicle is music. My vehicle is food. Your teachers are the Greeks. My teachers are the Romans. and what I think both of you have a grand perspective of is history and how societies like the Greek and Roman societies crumbled because they did not live the certain virtues that we're talking about on the call today, right? I study Cicero, Seneca, Augustine, all of which called gratitude, not only the greatest virtue, but the parent of all others, the moral memory of mankind, of which Cicero said no duty is more imperative than proving one's gratitude. At the same time of which Seneca said ingratitude is the most common vice in today's society, of which all wickedness comes from, of which Augustine, in his book, The City of God, Emperor Augustine, these are people from 2,000 years ago, by the way, for those of you that are listening, he called Rome the ungrateful republic. And that's what caused their demise. What else is an ungrateful nation but an unjust nation? You talked about justice earlier as a form of verb. So our teachers are linked to similar civilizations. And I think you and me look at the world today and say, yeah, America, we got a little wayward. Corporate America, civic justice, social divide, class warfare, fighting foreign wars, running out of money, political usurper, whatever it is, looks very similar to what Greek and Romans went through 2,000 years ago.
Absolutely.
But you know what you and I don't do? We don't dwell in the negative. We provide an opportunity and a playbook for hope. Now, what's so crazy is that America is preparing for its 250th birthday party. On July 4th, 2026, my friend, the 42nd Treasurer of the United States of America, Rosie Gumatao Rios, is chairing that entire initiative on behalf of America. My goal, I think, Felipe, you and I, should be to tell the story of yesteryear, history, tell the story of what America is going through today, present, and provide a vision for the future that we can all rally around between now and our 250th birthday party so that we celebrate that birthday with an attitude of gratitude, making the choice every day to explore, to learn, and love all of those around us. Deal?
Deal. And food and music are the greatest unifiers of all.
We got this, pal. We're going to have fun.
All right. We'll do one soon. Chris,
any last words in closing?
Sorry?
Any last words in closing?
I'm grateful, my friend. Thank you. Gratitude. This was incredible. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Chris.
What was your favorite part? Folks, thank you for tuning in. For all you loyal listeners, again, my favorite moments of the week are when you email in your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns of today's episode guest. For all you new listeners, again, as I mentioned earlier, I have no clue how you stumbled upon our little corner of the world. But I'm glad you showed up. And now I think you know. You stumbled into a conversation filled with people and are already surrounded by people in your world that believe in the same things that you believe in. You're not alone. The world's got your back. There's a lot of good out there. You just got to make the choice to pay attention to it. Click that subscribe button. Share this episode with a friend. And we'll see you on another episode of Gratitude Through Hard Times. I hope y'all are having a phenomenal day on Earth. Remember, folks, it's your world. Go explore. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, y'all.